My name's Mary Henderson Stucky, and I am honored to be a Legacy Award recipient. Well, yes, I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina, and at the ripe old age of 12 years old, or maybe it was 13, I put on my fanciest dress and went down to the Township Auditorium to view the Metropolitan Opera Road show of Carmen. And I thought, my goodness, what is this? I'd always sung, and I thought, ooh, this is just fantastic. It involved not only singing, telling a story, there were costumes, there were sets, and that was my introduction to opera. And I thought, this is something I really want to do. Well, as with most children of the time, I was in my church choirs. And in our church, the choir started at age 5 with the Sunshine Band and went on up. So everybody was in a choir. There were choirs in the schools, and we sang dramatic repertoire as well. Some things from operas, just for the fun of it. But as I continued to grow, I wanted to think about what I wanted to do with my career or in my future. Both parents are teachers and high-performing individuals, so we were encouraged to think about teaching. And I always thought, music, performing, how much fun it would be to teach. And so that's kind of where I went. I had interests in other areas of learning and knowledge, particularly journalism. I was speaking with another colleague this morning here at the NOA, and she said she wanted to be a journalist too when she was in high school. But after a trip to Washington and a time with the newspaper there as a sort of a high school intern, I realized that it wasn't as idealistic a job as I wanted. Journalists were producing and printing their opinions rather than just news. So I thought, this is not something I would have control over. And so I talked to my parents, and they said, well, what can you do with your life that's going to make a difference to other people? And I go, well, music, why not? So we went with that. I was a piano student. I found piano difficult. And so I thought, singing. Everybody can sing. This can't be that hard. So my piano teacher, who was a wonderful voice teacher, James Williams, he was just great. He said, well, let's just transition to voice. And he was really taken with what he considered my talent. So we continued to work, and then I auditioned for college and got to the Eastman School of Music, Rochester. And from there on, it was opera all the way, along with oratorio and song repertoires. Well, it was my goal to perform that which I wanted to teach. I could not think about teaching something I had not done. So opera, as much as I enjoyed it, I knew it wouldn't be my path for the rest of my life without teaching. So I embarked upon preparing myself. I was told by my voice teacher at the time, who was unbelievably direct, and he said, you know, you have a smallish voice, so opera may not be your best option. He said, however, in order to be the best singer you're going to be, and he said, you can't do it, you know. In order to be the best singer, you must sing opera, because the lines are longer, the phrases are longer, it opens the voice, it expands what you can do. And he said, your song singing will be that much the better for it. Okay. He said, also, you had to sing a character. And in song, you do that as well. This is just another way of doing it. And I thought, all right. So he said, because your voice is small, you're not going to sing at the Met. I said, that's okay. So he said, in Germany, there are different sizes of opera houses. He said, you can do this. And so we prepared by becoming as fluent in German as possible. I studied 4 years of German grammar at Eastman, and then a year of German libretto and poetry readings, and then a year of diction, so that I could prepare myself. And I received an exchange grant to the University of Cologne and the University of Rochester. They had exchange grant programs. So I received one of those grants to study as a German major at the University of Cologne. While there, I took lessons at the conservatory, particularly fencing, because I never had that, ever. So getting my body to move also made me realize that as a singer, I had to be an athlete, I have to be healthy. The going back and forth, this was really some athletic work we were doing. And we didn't actually hit each other with any of our APs. We just simply sort of lunged and went back. And we practiced theater movement that way. And it was eye-opening. I kind of had the thought that opera singers were simply people who came on stage and stood in one spot and just emoted. And I thought, how hard could that be? But in the 70s, when I got my jobs singing at opera theaters, this was a very athletic time. People actually were meant to move and to be in different positions while singing. I remember a Barber of Seville I sang when at the beginning of the Rosina aria, Una voce poco fa, I was on my tummy in bed and facing the audience and singing the aria. And then I had to roll over, keep singing, then get up and put on my outer garment, go downstairs because it was a 2-level stage, and then the aria proper started. So this was not something that would have happened perhaps in an earlier period, but from the 70s on, we have been moving, we have been athletic, we have been portraying the characters in many different ways. Oh yes, there was the Rosenkavalier. There was a lot of publicity for that because first of all, I was the first black Rosenkavalier in Germany. Maria Ewing sang that role 2 years later at another theater, and she was fantastic. I was not fantastic, but I was the first black Rosenkavalier. And all of the rest of the Rosenkavalier cast was small-voiced as well. So for us, it felt like a chamber version. As a matter of fact, Strauss had a chamber sort of version of the opera written so that we didn't have the full Strauss orchestra for that. And so we got a lot of publicity for that, and I thought that was a great deal of fun. But I have to tell you, the most pivotal role I ever did, and from which I learned the most, was the smallest role I ever had, which was the page in Salome. I think there may be 3 lines in the whole work. I introduce people who are coming to visit Herodias and Herod, and then I leave the stage. So I thought, oh, this is a good role. I will be done after the first act. I can go home and get some sleep before the next day's rehearsals. Well, my stage director had a very different idea of the page's role. I was to be an idée fixe kind of character, slithering through the scenes from one part of the opera to the other. As a matter of fact, I was laying on the front part of the stage, in the proscenium, before the curtain went up, before the audience came in, and I was lying there still. And when it was time for the opera to start, I started slithering, and you could hear the gasp from the audience, and then the curtain would go up, and I slithered on the stage. And I thought, you know, this is really not something I wanted to do. But I have to say, the role afforded me one of the best teaching experiences I ever had. In my position on the stage, I was always upstage, lying between John the Baptist and Herod and Herodias. And I was able to observe the big dramatic singers, Herod and Herodias, as they breathed, because I saw them from the back. I saw that these big dramatic voices used that wonderful open rib position for their inhalations, and they sang with full body connection from that position. And I thought, oh my gosh, I never would have known that before. I would have never had the experience of seeing that. Being a lighter voice myself, my breathing wasn't quite the same. as far as the body engagement on such a low level. But it was stunning. And so later on, when I would work with voices that were more of a dramatic nature or more of a spinto nature, I could get them in touch with their lower back breathing, which was really interesting. I love teaching because it gives me a chance to sort of pay back. My teachers were what I called encouragers and guides. They allowed me to teach myself to sing by guiding me. And that's what I feel like I'm doing with my students as well. I can easily say, oh, you do it my way or the highway, and go from that perspective. But the student doesn't really learn to sing from the teacher. He learns to sing by himself or herself. We lead them into that position where they can actuate this wonderful craft that they've learned to do. And that gives me a great deal of joy because that's how I was treated. I was treated well by people who were encouragers. And I find that that's the most important thing about teaching for me. I'm not really sure about achievement I'm most proud of, except for the fact that I am really stunned about being a Legacy Award recipient, because I really feel that my teaching was taught to me on the backs of people who really did a fabulous job. And so I'm honored by this award, but I realize I'm accepting it on behalf of others.